Welcome to the Human Evolution Podcast, where we dive deep into the science, philosophies, and strategies that create real and lasting change. I'm Ori Goldstein, and here we leave traditional self-help behind and map the real terrain of true personal development.
Welcome back, everybody. If we're sniffling and coughing and muting ourselves during this particular conversation, it's because I'm getting over a cold. I think Ori is too, or COVID. It could be any number of those things that go. If you can hear it in our voices, and hopefully we don't cough too much into the microphone. So last time we spoke about habits, and we got into just our different viewpoints on habits, and with other people that we listen to that we respect and read, we got into some of their philosophies on habits. And you can't have too many shows about habits. You could literally do. It could actually be a daily show, like Ryan Holiday has the Daily Stoic. You could literally have a daily habit show.
Easily.
Because habits are something we do every day, or don't do every day. Today, we're going to get into some of the inner stories that we tell ourselves. That's going to have a little bit to do around like some experiences you had recently. And we've got some things coming up for both of us, more public speaking engagements coming up where we'll actually be not just live on camera, virtually talking to people, but we'll more than likely be on a stage somewhere. I don't know when that's going to be, but I know it's within the next year that's going to happen. So it's no secret to anybody who's watching or listening that we have full edit control over this. So if we screw up or I double speak or something we want to cut, we can literally go in and we do that. We can cut it out. We try not to cut these too much. We want to keep it naturally and flowing. We don't go through and like chop every little piece of the conversation out, but we do want it to not be annoying to listen to. So we try to keep it flowing and cut the silences out. So that said, when you're doing something live, whether it's a live webinar, live broadcast, whatever, or something on stage, you don't really have that luxury of being able to go back and hit rewind or pause. And I'm getting anxious just thinking about it now.
And you just hit something there that's so interesting for me, because it's like we talk about the fear of public speaking, but for every single person, it shows up very differently. For me, that idea of the rewind, pause, and edit button is not the thing that bothers me. The thing I love about our podcast is the fact that I am looking at you and I'm talking to you and that I've got someone to talk to. Whereas if I'm up on stage and talking, it's that feeling of talking to an abyss. And I can't really gauge what goes on. And so, like, as you know, one of my things I really hate doing is making, like, for example, videos for Instagram or something like that, because I'm just staring at my camera and I'm like, hey guys, love you guys, whatever it is. And it just feels so weird to me. Whereas with you, I get that little bit of feedback. Even right now, as I talk to you and I see you nodding, I'm like, okay, cool, he gets it. I'm not losing my mind. It's those small things that make a difference. But where I want to take it is actually, let's rewind this back. Let's age me as I tend to do. Like, let's rewind back 25 years ago to an interesting experience that happened to me. It wasn't ever a really big thing. And most people that were in that experience probably wouldn't say it was a big deal at all. But going back to when I was about 21 years old, and my best friend was having a 21st birthday party, and his mom asked me to give a speech. And I was like, sure, I love giving speeches, no big deal. And I wrote out like the perfect speech and I was completely ready for it and everything else. And I went and I stood up in front of the crowd, and I don't know what the hell happened, but I sat there going like, hi guys. I gave the speech, but like, I think that the thing that really got to me when I look back on it was when I was trying to tell jokes and the audience was crickets. And I was like, I think that that's the whole idea of like speaking into the void to some degree, right? Like, it's like when you tell a joke, you want to see that someone laughs at least to some degree. Otherwise, you're like, oh shit, this did not land well. Nonetheless, that happened. And something in my brain came up with a new story. I'm afraid of public speaking. And that's the way it went. Fast forwarding through that, I knew I had to get past it. And I went and I studied hypnosis and NLP, and I did all the different things around it. And I even worked with Tony Robbins' companies for a while. And I actually went and I gave talks on a daily basis. And I spoke to groups of whether it was 3 people or 30 people. And I got over it to a large degree, and I was able to talk to groups. But in the back of my mind, that story was still there of I have a fear of public speaking. And now fast forwarding to like about 5 or so years ago now, whatever it was my best friend's wedding. And that sounds like a title of a movie as it is, but it was my best friend's wedding. And he asked me to give a speech. I'm like, of course I'll give a speech. No big deal. In the back of my mind, there's that thought of I have a fear of public speaking, and I hadn't done it for a while. And and I made up like the perfect speech. And that morning I remember practicing it with my sister. Like, I was on the phone, I was practicing it, and I wanted to say it without cue cards, right? I wanted to get it exactly right. And I wanted to pull out the right things at the right times, whatever it was. And I completely flubbed up on the speech. And because in the back of my mind, it was like me remembering when I was 21 years old, everything that I had done NLP wise to change it. And I just remembered it, and it didn't go very well at all in my mind. And then that evening, it was time. I was a groomsman, like we're preparing for the speech, and I know it's coming. So I'm like, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to drink a bunch of whiskey, and that's going to make it better. So we drink
Hell
whiskey,
yeah.
and
No, all right.
right, you get that
Now
one,
you're
right?
talking.
So I downed some whiskey beforehand, and because I was so nervous, it just got stuck in my stomach, and I just felt terrible, to the point that like the DJ comes up to me like right before the everything starts, and he goes, "Okay, fine. So I'm gonna do this thing first, and then it will be your turn to give a speech." And I remember just walking up to the DJ as he just started the other thing, and I just said to him, "Take me out the roster. I'm not giving a speech." And I reinforced that story in my mind of I suck at public speaking. And it was just the way I went. It's just that's the way it goes. Now, to take it forward now to like the story that I really want to share with you, which is now a few weeks ago. Now, obviously, you and I mean, we're going on about our 30th podcast now. And I'm giving talks to Brittany, and I'm giving talks to you. And I feel pretty comfortable with it. And I actually love this. I love the way that we do these things. As you can tell right now, I'm enjoying talking. That's not a big deal. And I know I'm good at it. I've done it so many different times in the past. But a few weeks ago, I'm part of a dance troupe with Joy, and we were giving a performance. And the person that runs the troupe says, like, Ori, like, she's German, and she's like, would you mind going up on stage and just introducing the people? No problem. I can go up there and say, hey, guys, the Florida Hopscotters, no big deal. And then she walks up to me like maybe an hour before the performance, and she goes, would you mind telling a bit of a story about how this all came to be? And I'm like, it's like, it's kind of like, but wait a second, I'm scared of public speaking. But I was like, of course I'll do it. It's not a big deal. And so and I remember how now, as we're leading up to the performance, that there's that story in my head going like, Ori, you're afraid of public speaking. And I sat there going like, but the thing that was different now is having done enough work on myself, and specifically through this, I was able to distance myself enough away. And for the first time, however much I've done it with myself, however much I've done it with clients, I was able to truly hear that voice in the back of my head telling me that I was scared of public speaking. And I noticed that as I was telling myself I was scared of public speaking, I would start feeling certain emotions in my body. I'd start feeling how my stomach was tight and everything else. But as I stepped away from it, I basically caught the thief in the night. It's kind of like, stop right there. I see what you're doing. And I was able to see that other part inside of myself going, you're scared of public speaking, and paying attention to this thing and that thing and that thing. And once I caught it, it became this really cute, fun thing for me in terms of the fact that, like, as I noticed that voice in my head saying, you're scared of public speaking, I was like, stop that. You're going to scare me. And the moment that I started talking to it like it was an external entity of like, stop doing that. I'm not scared of public speaking. And I got excited about it. And the thing I really want to share with the group today is really that cognitive dissonance that you can create. And it's easy to say, but like the thing I want to talk about today is how to get there in terms of being able to step away from your story enough to see that your story becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And as long as you're in that self-fulfilling prophecy, you're so stuck in it, you don't even see that there's an outside. But the moment you step away from it, you can absolutely see it for what it is. And the moment you see it for what it is, like I stepped up on stage, like I couldn't see anyone because there were bright lights in my face. And I was like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you a bit of a story, blah, 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 blah. And the Florida Hop Spotters, here we come. It went great, and everything felt really wonderful. And now the voice in the back of my head says, careful, or you're jinxing yourself. Next time you're going to feel afraid again. And the funny thing is, I love the fact that this is going on, because as that goes on, right now, as I tell you that story, I can get that cognitive dissonance and say, that's the voice in the back of my head doing this, and that's not a truth. And that difference makes the largest difference in the world in terms of being stuck in a story and seeing the fact that there's one portion inside of you that's stuck in that story, but you can go above it and see things differently. It's getting that meta perspective that changes everything.
I spent my whole day doing this, just arguing with my thoughts. I think we talked a while back about how I had that problem driving over bridges. It was a similar situation where, and now I'm totally fine. And now I say that because I worked myself up in the distance. It's kind of like the DJ says, hey, we're going to play this, then you're going to be on. Same thing. And once I see those big pilings or whatever.
Here comes that bridge.
Yeah, here comes a bridge. And I would see the signs like Mackinac Bridge, 10 miles. I'm like, oh, fuck. But same thing though. And using the techniques that you're talking about, just interrupting it and sitting with it and just be like, okay, because eventually I might have done this before too with the public speaking situation, but because I remember going up on stage and having to talk, and I was just overwhelmed with anxiety, and I was like, finally, just fine, I'll just sweat. I just said, screw it, do your worst, make me pass out in front of all these people, why don't you? And I don't know if that was a healthy way to deal with it, but I was like, go ahead. What are you going to do? Make me run off this, make me not pass out behind the wheel and drive off the road? Just do it. Do whatever you're going to do to me. And I made it
So
through. I don't
that's
know
a
if that was a good
really,
idea or
no,
not,
that's
but
a
yeah.
very, very powerful technique. And basically the idea of that is the way fear works is when you're afraid of something, the way it works in the brain is you see an outcome such as I'm going to be up on stage and I'm going to make a fool of myself. And you don't see past it. That's what fear is about. Fear doesn't have an ending. It's a story that ends at the bad place. And if you think about it, if you've got a movie where the protagonist dies 20 minutes into it, but then the movie continues and you see that life continues afterwards, it's not that bad a movie. If the movie goes and the protagonist dies at the last minute and then the credits go, you go, that was a really sad movie. It's the exact same thing here. Whereas if your brain is sitting there saying, I'm going to get up on stage and I'm going to freeze and everything will be terrible, your brain goes, I don't want to do this. If you sit there saying, bring on your worst and I'm going to deal with it, something in your brain goes, what does that look like? And it goes a bit further. And the moment that you go past that dead end and you see the fact that there's no abyss that you fall into, things feel a lot safer for you. So that's one thing. I do want to go into more things about the stories, but I definitely wanted to go into that. But I love that case. And just continue there.
Some of this was induced by pharmaceuticals, not illegal drugs, but like things that are illegal now. If you recall, Ultimate Orange was like a pre-workout thing with ephedrine back in the early 2000s. And we would take that before our parades. I was in the Marine Corps, and we used to do those parades at the Marine Barracks in DC on Friday nights. We do the performances there. And sometimes I'm sitting, and it's the first time I experienced this. Of course, you take pre-workout stuff and you're 20 years old, but I'm sitting there. You're supposed to stay perfectly still. And I remember, I think this is a panic attack. Can anybody see me? Whatever. But where I'm going with this is when it was over, the come down off of a very anxious situation, it's almost like euphoria. I've done that before too. I'm like, I know on the other side of this, that I'm going to feel really silly. I'm probably going to be laughing, maybe a little hysterical. I don't know, but I've done that. What you're describing, I've played it all the way through.
Go to the end.
Like, so what?
Yep.
It's going to be bad, but it's going to be funny when I get to the other side of this bridge. I'll be like, okay, I'm still here. Stupid,
Yeah. And it doesn't need to be a good ending. It's like you could say, like, you know what, I drive off the bridge, God forbid, and I die. But then when you say, and I die, and I'll whatever that is, everything will be okay. It's different than saying, I'm just going to drive off the bridge and then seeing a black ending. That the brain hates the concept of a vacuum. And when you're stuck in a fear, that's what it has. It has the vacuum. It doesn't see an ending. Even if the ending is terrible, weirdly enough, it's better than no ending at all. It really, really does make a difference. And so I want to go into this in a bit more detail here because this is such a powerful thing for so many people to go into. And in hypnosis and NLP, this is called dissociation. And what it really boils down to is when you're afraid of something, what really is going on is that you're so stuck in the story that the story is there's nothing beyond it, right? So it's just kind of like, I'm going to be on that bridge and I'm going to crash and oh my God, life is going to be terrible. Or, oh my God, there's a spider over there and I don't know what to do about it. You're stuck in the story. Or I'm going up on stage and I'm afraid of public speaking. And that is the entire story. And what you do with hypnosis, what you do with NLP, and what anyone can really do for themselves, as I did in that scenario with giving the speech with the dance, is what you want to do is you want to and the example I'll give, it's one of my favorite examples, is when I work with someone and they are taking psychedelic substances. Psychedelic substances completely mess with your mind and you're going to have the craziest thoughts possible. You're going to be like, I'm the worst person on the face of the planet, or it's, oh my God, nothing is ever going to change for me. And what I love doing with those people is I just sit there for a moment, I let them go through it and I go, or is it possible you took a psychedelic substance? And the moment that I say that and their brain clicks and it goes, yeah, okay, it changes everything for them because it's an immediate dissociation from being stuck in the story to seeing above it and seeing how the story created itself. To put that in my perspective, if I'm sitting there going like, I'm going to bomb on stage and I'm bad at public speaking, I'm completely in the story. Or I say, look, I've actually done a few good things and I go above it a bit. And this is just the story playing out and I go above the story and I dissociate away from it. I'm that much stronger. It's the exact same thing with you and the bridge or anything else. That element of dissociation changes everything. And I want to take this more into identity level beliefs, etc., like that. But like, it's a really, by all means, like, please let's go through this first, and then I'll take it a bit further.
A little bit of a sidetrack here, because in terms of public speaking, it's always interesting to me that there's two different ways to look at that. You can get up on stage with something that you've rehearsed and you've had to remember. I'm just wondering in my mind, what would be more stressful, make me more anxious? I've been in situations before where just ad-libbing or whatever has been a little bit more comfortable. I know this is not a public speaking show, but you know what I mean?
No,
Versus
but that's really
having
important.
to try to recall while you're talking, like, oh shit, am I going to remember this? Because, you know, like most like big comedians, they have perfectly timed sets and everything else, and they write that out and they perform it over and over and over again in smaller clubs. They do it a million times. When it comes time for me to do something like that, not a stand-up show, but the extra added layer of, well, I could see it either way. I could see being anxious about not having enough to say or having too much to say.
And so you just hit the nail on the head. And the point is, for every single person, it is something different. For the person that feels tongue-tied when they don't know what to say, feel very afraid of improv. For the person that feels that they don't remember things well, will be very afraid with a set procedure that they have to go through. And the point is, both of them are just stories in their heads, because very often, like it's right now, before we started the show, we were like, well, what are we going to talk about? We'll talk about this. And having that in my mind, it worked perfectly fine. So I'm good with set procedure. And at the same time, when I don't know what to say, I'm also good with improv. We have both skills within us, but if we've got the story of remembering the time that we sucked at improv in whatever way it was, and that's a story we associate with, we're going to be like, I suck if I don't know what to say next. If we remember the time that we messed up on that set speech, we're going to remember that one. And then we're going to say, like, I suck if I don't know if I've got to stick to a script, and I'm not going to. And the truth is, both of them are stories, and both of them just pull you into a place of lack of resourcefulness, rather than understanding the fact that you are very good at both if you just pull in the correct resources.
For those people that have ever faced with a situation like that before, I imagine if you go back far enough, there's something, maybe you were in second grade and had to get up in front of the class. Some people may be thinking, well, I've never been faced with, like, how would I have this story in my head? There's something.
So let's go into that for a moment. It's because that's really the important thing to understand. The fact that it's not necessarily a fear of public speaking that may affect people. Like, maybe it is that you never actually did give a speech. But maybe for you, what the thing is, when you stand up on stage, the story that you associate with it is, I'm in front of so many people, and therefore I stand a higher chance of being rejected. And now you remember the time that you were rejected as a teenager by the girl or guy you liked, whatever it was. And maybe that's it for you. Or maybe for you, it's a matter of that I don't like being in the spotlight, because then all of a sudden people laugh at me. And you remember the time that you were in school as a child and you wet your pants, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be public speaking. It's your brain will associate with it whatever it is that's necessary in order to create the story. And the point is that the big point here to really, really, really catch yourself on is, it's always a story. And the moment you can step out of that story, everything changes.
We're just talking about big things here. I do this all day. I've got stuff to do after we're done recording here. And so this is what I do on a daily basis. I'm sure other people do it as well. I have a list of things I need to do in my mind. I'll be working on this crap all night. It's terrible. I hate, I don't want to do it. Like, there's a few things we, all have to do that we don't necessarily like doing. But I know if I sit down to do it, it's going to take me 45 minutes. It's not going to take 3 hours, because I know that because I did it yesterday and the day before that. But I tell myself stories all day. And it's probably like a human defense mechanism, because we're always trying to anticipate what's around the next corner and everything else. But not to jump into the anxiety end of things, but it's all day long. It's the stories in my head, the same shit every morning. For example, I went to the gym this morning. We had like a group cardio thing. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Like, I'm just, and of course I made it through and I was fine. But my entire day is quite literally, I'm not going to be able to do this. This is going to suck. And then I'm wrong about everything, I guess is what I'm getting at. I'm wrong about everything I think ahead of time. So I just need to learn to cut those thoughts off more often.
I do want to catch you there, because here's the thing. The truth is, it's not that you're wrong about everything, because if you're wrong about everything, you wouldn't trust yourself at all. The challenge is you're right about just enough few things that your brain says, see, I told you that this story is correct. And that's what messes with you. If you were completely wrong, you'd actually be better off. But what happens is your brain thinks that it's super psychic. It thinks it knows what's going to happen, and therefore it puts you in that story. It's like, well, this is going to be just like what happened to me when I was 12, and I know that to be true. If you were completely wrong all the time, and your brain says it's going to be the same as what happened to me when I was 12, and you go, I can't trust you, you would actually, weirdly enough, be better off. It's not the right way to go, but you would actually be better off. The challenge is your brain plays into the psychic realm. and it thinks it knows that this is the same situation as this and this. I'm driving over the bridge and I'm going to get that exact same feeling that I had when I drove over the bridge 6 months ago. If you knew for a fact that that was wrong, you don't have a problem driving over the bridge.
It took me a long time in that particular instance, and it was just this last time, actually, this last summer, going up where there was not even a thought. Because it wasn't that long before that, I was like, I got to pull off the road. I can't do this, or I got to stop. There's a pub over there. I got to stop, have some Guinness before I drive those things. So yeah, it took a while. It took a long time.
And here's the thing, like, I mean, I'm talking as a hypnotist right now, and I want to really point out the fact that I am the person that, however much I talk about other people and the stuff I've worked on, here I am a few weeks ago that my brain played the exact same trick on me. A few years ago that I actually said, I don't want to give the speech. But now the thing that makes a difference, and the thing that I really want to point out here in terms of the human evolution of it all, is the concept of, I want you to grow with me, not the fact that I'm the person that knows everything right, but like, I mean, that this is something that we can all focus in on, and that this is a truth in terms of the fact of your brain makes stories. If you're stuck in the story, if it's a good story, God bless you. If you're stuck in a bad story, it's going to just affect you. And all I'm asking you to do is remember this conversation when it happens, in terms of like, dissociate. Realize the fact that you're stuck in a story. Realize the fact that it is no different than you taking a psychedelic substance and going like, I'm never going to be okay. And all I want you to do in that moment is to be me in that moment and just say, or is it possible that this is just another story? Is it possible that you just took a weird psychedelic and that's what's going on for you? That is the difference that can completely change everything.
Yeah. I read something recently. This guy laid it out kind of like you're doing now, the difference between thinking and thought. Like a thought arises, but then it was pretty good. It was like a short story, but it's very along these lines, where it's like you have a thought, like I have to do something, and then your thinking is all this other nonsense, like what we attribute to that, and just like tacking on dumb stuff to all the little things, like even last night I had to run to the grocery store, and which I hate. In case anybody doesn't know, this, it's the worst thing you can do to be send me to a grocery store. Before I got there, all these things in my mind of how this is going to be terrible, this is going to be terrible. I'm going to be mad carrying these bags back, and some of that ended up being true. But man, I just made myself miserable for the 30-minute walk from here to the store. That's 30 minutes of my life. I could have been like listening to a podcast or enjoying music or something, and here I am just angry all the way there on something that I have to do every week anyway, and then ended up not being that bad.
I told you a story about the guy in the flat tire, right? It's a very silly and stupid story, so I'll try and like abbreviate as much as possible. But like, a guy's driving down the highway and he gets a flat tire. He gets out the car and he's like, all right, cool. So I got a flat tire, not a big deal. And he starts taking off the tire and he goes, you know what, about like a half mile back, there was a gas station, not a big deal. And so he just takes the flat, and they can probably fix up the flat, no big deal. And so like, he takes the tire and he starts rolling it down the road. And as he's walking down the road, he's like going like, but there weren't any other gas stations around, so I bet you that they're probably going to overcharge me. Son of a bitch. It's like, and now he keeps rolling the tire, he keeps kicking it down the road. And then like a few minutes later, he's going, and they're probably going to go freaking crazy. They're probably going to charge me extra for using my credit card, because they can do whatever they want. They can just extort me. I know for a fact that they're going to do it, right? And then it is like, and then he keeps kicking the tire down the road. And then he goes, and they're probably going to charge me extra for driving me back to my car. Those fucking sons of bitches. They're going to do this. Yeah. By the time he gets to the freaking tire store, he is so wound up that like this happy mechanic works out and goes, hey, what can I do you for? And he like takes a fire, freaking throws it at the mechanic, goes like, keep the fucking tire, And so the idea is the fact that as you start putting yourself into this story and you start working yourself through the story, everything becomes more and more realistic for you, and you start creating the momentum of that story. And as that momentum catches you, the whole idea is, the thing you can do best is, rather than, and we discussed this before, it's what I call the difference between narrowing your focus or expanding your focus. So if, for example, taking the flat tire story, for example, as you start narrowing your focus, going, and then this will happen, and this will happen, and this will happen, or I'm going to drive on the bridge, and then this will happen, and then this will happen, and this will happen. And you start narrowing your focus into the issues. What you can do is you can just expand your focus, and literally, like, this actually works very well for people as they go through any kind of anxiety or panic. It's if you just take your focus into something like paying attention to your breath. If you just kind of like pay attention to your peripheral vision, and you actually stop your focus from going narrow into the situation, or you actually ask yourself better questions that basically expand your focus, going like, or what else could happen when I went on that bridge? Were there ever any times I went over a bridge and I didn't feel this way? So taking the mechanic example, if you keep narrowing your focus, going like, and he's got to do this, and he's got to do this, and he's got to do this, you're going to take yourself down that story. Or you can expand the focus and sit there saying, or maybe it's just like a really cool, nice hometown place that's probably going to be a good old boy, right? Or has it ever happened to me that like that I was able to negotiate a better deal, whatever it is that you want to do with someone? Or has it ever happened that someone was just, maybe he'll just do the tire for me for free because he's a really good guy? And so the idea is if you really like where your brain is going, narrow your focus and go deeper into it. If you don't like where your brain is going, expand your focus and go more general and pull yourself away from it. And that can be something as simple, like I said, paying attention to what's going on in your peripheral vision, paying attention to what's going on in another place in your body, dissociating away from the story enough by noticing the fact that there's so many other things you can pay attention to. Like one of my favorite questions I ask with a client when they're going through anxiety is, what is it that you are not paying attention to right now in the moment of their anxiety? And that question completely messes with them because, like, I mean, you could pay attention to the fact that there's stars out in the universe. You could pay attention to the fact that there's someone outside that's drinking coffee that's too hot for them. Your brain can take you in 20 million different places. And as long as it doesn't take you deeper into the story, you're starting to win the game. And that makes such a big difference.
Yeah, I love the physical part of this. So the breathing thing for me has been helpful just for all the years I've been meditating and everything else. But I find what's most effective is you literally have tunnel vision on something, you know, even if your brain's going, like I'm just staring at the sidewalk yesterday, for example, cursing all the way to the grocery store. But I have done before where I'm like, let me just pull back and just let my eyes. And it's weird because that physiological change, it just interrupts your brain, it's so interesting to me how those two things are connected. I know we've done some stuff before or some in a session before, and we don't have to get into this now.
That's where my brain was going.
Yeah, which is super interesting. If you want to give a little quick, I think it's been a while since we talked about that, how the different left, right brain in the eyes.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, there's so many different places my brain wants to go with this, but like, I mean, like the one that you're talking about is, so I think that this goes back to about the 1950s, 1960s as such. What neurologists discovered is that when a person accesses different portions of their brain, you can actually tell very, very much so based upon where their eyes go. So basically the brain and the eyes are so connected that in order to access a certain portion of your brain, your eyes actually do sometimes micro, sometimes macro movements. So to put it very simply, and I'll go a little bit deeper, is if you're accessing the visual cortex of your brain, your eyes go above center level. So you're looking up. If you're accessing the auditory cortex of your brain, they're going side to side. And if you're accessing more towards feelings, they go down. Now, it does go a bit different in terms of like if you're accessing created visuals, they'll go up into the right. If you're accessing remembered feelings, it goes up into the left, auditory, et cetera, et cetera. But now the thing that really became very interesting, and this became the basis of what is used in a lot of therapeutic sessions called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is they actually discovered and this is my take on it, is if you move your eyes in certain places, it's not that just as you think about something, your eyes move, but as you move your eyes to certain places, you're actually activating certain portions of your brain. Very often when a person has an issue, like we said, you're going more and more deep into a specific way of thinking. So like, let's just say, for example, as I'm thinking about public speaking, I am picturing what happened to me when I was 21 years old. So given what I'm talking about here, my eyes would go up into my left and I'd be remembering a picture of me standing up on the stage, whatever it is. Or I'd be in that picture of me looking out at people, whatever it is. Now, if I'm in that picture and I'm completely stuck in that one place, it's going to be very difficult for me. If I just keep looking at that picture, it's going to be very difficult for me to do anything about it. Now, so what happens if I actually force myself to use different portions of my brain while I think about public speaking? So if I actually force myself to look down and go into my feelings, if I actually force myself to go left to right and access the auditory cortex of my brain, or if I actually force myself to go up into my right and access created images. And so what EMDR does, and what I do with clients in just different ways, is I actually force them to activate different portions of their brain while thinking about the same thing. And what you're doing is you're creating whole brain thinking. You're going more general and you're using different portions of your brain to think about public speaking rather than being stuck in that one portion of your brain that has that fear completely locked into place. And that in itself is a game changer for so many people. Like there's so many people that will tell you about the fact that all that they needed to do to get over fear was just looking left and right multiple times, kind of like watching a tennis match. And it completely changed everything for them.
We spend so much time, effort, money, and there's the pharmaceutical industry, all these things. And there could just be like just a very simple physiological change that needs to happen. So people can do this on themselves also, because I did read somewhere or heard somewhere that sometimes people go for walks and they'll kind of do the thing with their eyes. Like, what would be an example of somebody doing that? Like, say somebody stressed about something and they just went out for a walk, provided they didn't run into any fucking telephone poles or fall into a sewer.
I tend to do this more at home for exactly that reason. So I'm going to actually take this to a different level for a moment, and then we'll take it back. So like, for example, like, let's just say I am just stressed over the fact that I'm going to have to give a speech tomorrow, whatever it is. So the one thing that happens in hypnosis, and one of the characteristics of hypnosis, is very often what happens is you get dilation of the pupils and very wide open eyes. When you have a person in a trance state, they kind of like look like it's what we call the doggy dinner bowl look. They're like, and
I love that.
and knowing for a fact that that's a trance state, for example, and that in a trance state your brain is more open and receptive. What you can do with someone, or what I do with myself, is knowing for a fact that I'm scared about something, is I can actually force myself into that by just actually thinking about that thing, and then kind of like sitting in a comfortable position, breathing comfortably, and opening up my eyes to peripheral vision. So what are the things I see around me more so than directly in front of me? And as soon as you do that, you're forcing your brain physiologically into more of a trance receptive state, because when you're looking wide, you're not a hunter. It's a dangerous place to look wide when you've got to like look at one thing that you have to basically run away from. You're teaching your neurology that you're in a safe space for a moment, and you're going into more of a receptive place. So as you sit there thinking about the thing that scares you, and you open up your peripheral vision, and then I would ask questions like, what are the things I'm not paying attention to right now? That in itself completely changes everything, and it can completely rewire you. Now, to take it to your question in terms of that, it's if I also notice for a fact that I need more, what I'll do is I'll think about the thing that specifically scares me. So I'll think about, I'm going to give a talk tomorrow. And then what I do is, it's for a lot of people, I don't think that they'll be able to see it. So I'm just going to do it very small like this. I'll put two things on either side of me, or I'll pay attention to two things on either side of me. And I'll just force myself to look side to side like this. And then I'll do up and down while thinking.
So for anybody who's not watching this, he's holding his thumbs up.
You couldn't see it? Oh, yes. Oh, sorry.
No,
yeah.
I can see it. It's okay. So you're holding your thumbs up on either side of your face, and you also adjusted the elevation, like one above the. So not only are you moving your eyes in those patterns, but you have something to target for to make sure that you're hitting the right angles.
It tends to help. The way I describe it to my clients is, imagine that you're watching a tennis match. You're right at the center net, and you're going side to side, is what I would say if you aren't watching this right now. And then you just do the same thing. Pickleball match, exactly. The idea is, what you're doing in that moment is you're actually forcing your brain to expand more, because you're not allowing yourself to stay in one specific cortex of the brain, in one specific area of your brain. So powerful. And there's other explanations of it. I'm not saying that this is a correct explanation of it, but what I can tell you is that it is insanely powerful. Insanely powerful, and something that people can do for themselves immediately.
Huge fan of anything we can give to people that they can work on in the day to day. Obviously there's no substitute for therapy, but just being able to do the little things every day is a huge difference. This is coming from somebody who practices a lot of these things and still falls off, and
as we all do. Like I just said, this was me 4 weeks ago, right? I'm not sitting here telling people that I'm the guru, sit at my feet, and I know all the answers. All I'm sharing with you are the things I know that works, because I've done it on myself and others multiple times, and I will continue to do it on myself because it's stuff that works. The thing that I want to share with people, Orson Scott Card said it really well, the writer of Ender's Game. He said, we question all of our beliefs except for our deepest ones, because those we never think to question. And it's the exact same thing here, that we've got all of these stories in our brains. And as I say to you right now, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but every single time that you're pulling yourself out of a state of faith or joy, every single time you're pulling yourself out of that state, it's because there's a story going on. And if you can really, really become aware of that, and then just literally ask yourself, what is the story I'm telling myself right now? That in itself already creates that little bit of cognitive dissonance, and then creating the dissociation away from that in terms of, is this story real? Even just teasing yourself for saying the story and saying, I don't want to play that game with you anymore right now. It makes such a big difference for people, and it can completely be a game changer. And that is the big thing I want to play around with you right now, and I want you to play around with, in terms of, you're telling yourself a story, and if you can just make yourself aware of the fact you're telling yourself a story, you can dissociate away from it enough that you can tell yourself a better story.
Perfectly said. I've got much more personal anecdotes I could add to that, but much appreciated again. We love everybody who's liked and subscribed to the show. We've got more content coming out. I don't want to give this away. We're going to have some little bit different production quality coming up in the next videos. Maybe throwing in some on-screen effects to kind of guide us along what we're talking about. So I'm saying that now, so the guy who's doing it for us has to do it now, and he's wonderful. So we appreciate everybody. We'll see you next week, and to be continued.
Love you guys. Thanks, Lee.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. Ever wondered how journaling could help change your life? You can find out by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. It's a powerful tool for deep self-reflection, and it's completely free. And if you're looking to connect with Ori and learn more about how he can help you, visit his website at origoldstein.com. A link will also be in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.